Paltz new firehouse, still under construction, as you can see. I'm William Murray. I'm the village trustee here and also a member of the all-volunteer New Paltz Fire Department. This is a project long in coming, a couple of decades to come about, and this is our first public event held at the structure itself, so thanks for coming. I want to recognize a few people who are here. Our Police Chief, Rob Lucchese, our Village Trustee, Stana Weisberg, Ted Nita, who's here, who's developing our PV solar array that one day will go on our roof. He's the Vice President of Walden Environmental, and Sam Delahaye, the project architect from Alfondre. Where are you, Sam? So it's a beautiful day. I'm glad to see everybody got out to join us, and I'm going to turn this over to Jen Metzger. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, and welcome everyone on this incredibly beautiful day. So I really want to thank the village and town of New Paltz for co-sponsoring this event today with New Yorkers for Clean Power. Look, we are at a critical moment on climate. We know from the latest international scientific assessment that we have to steeply reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We have to move off fossil fuels to prevent a dangerous rise in global mean temperature. That's not a subject of debate. But New York is rising to the challenge. We passed the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act in 2019. And there is a public hearing for our region on the state's plan to meet the emissions reduction goals of that law. And that includes a 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and of reaching net zero emissions by 2050 and making sure that we have an entirely carbon-free, fossil fuel-free grid by 2040. So this is like really where the rubber hits the road, people. Today, our elected leaders from the state level down to the local level are here because they are committed to the goals of the climate law and because they recognize that shifting to a clean energy economy benefits our communities in so many ways beyond the climate benefits. Benefits like improving local air quality and public health, creating literally hundreds of thousands of jobs across New York, building efficient buildings that lower our energy costs, and keeping our energy investments local in our communities and in New York. I just want to mention that the fossil fuel industry has taken notice of what we're doing in New York and has launched a massive, well-funded campaign to try to convince us that we can't move off fossil fuels in the coming decades. But this is simply not true. We have the technologies, we have the alternatives to fossil fuels. Energy efficient heat pumps are actually selling like gangbusters in our area because oil and propane are extremely expensive. More and more people are switching to efficient all-electric alternatives, and we're here today to spotlight a great local example, the New Paltz Firehouse, which is nearing completion. And we'll get to hear about this great collaborative endeavor this morning. So I'm super pleased to be able to introduce our first speaker, State Senator Michelle Hinchey, who has been such a climate leader for us in the state legislature. She sits on the important energy and telecom and environmental conservation committees, in addition to chairing the Agriculture Committee, and she's a co-sponsor of the All-Electric Buildings Act, among other really important initiatives at the state level. So thank you, Senator Hinchey, and I'm going to pass it on to you.
Thank you, Jen, first and foremost, for all of your incredible leadership in this space and for helping convene us here to the New Paltz Fire Department. Thank you for being such visionaries and really leaning into what we need to do. The town and village of New Paltz as well, and everybody here today. I was just at at Cahill Elementary School talking to fourth graders, and that is exactly why this is so important. We have to get off fossil fuels. We have to decarbonize our environment, and we have to do everything we can to preserve our planet for the next generation. That's why we're here, because it's not hyperbole to say that if we don't take these actions, we won't have a planet for our future kids. And that's really, really important, because I think everybody here gets that, but I think it hasn't totally sunk in to understand the need and how quickly we need to do this. One of the things that is also surprising, I think, to a lot of people is that New York's more than 1 million buildings emit more pollution than any other state. So we see ourselves as green drivers. We've done the historic legislation with the CLCPA, and yet we have a lot of work to do at the state level and our community levels to make sure that we are actually now living up to the goals of the CLCPA that were set forth by Jen Metzger and so many of our colleagues in the Senate and the Assembly. So we have to do that now. And there's a lot of also false information about how we can get there. This is an example of that we can do it, which is so exciting. It is happening. Communities, local communities are taking this upon themselves to do it because they know that's the future. They know this is where we need to go, and we don't have time to waste. So it's time for the state to pass the All Electric Buildings Act and make sure that we are doing everything we can at the state level to help municipalities, to help building owners and homeowners get to where we need to be. As of now, no state in the country has yet to commit to decarbonizing all of the new buildings and homes. We can be, and we should be, a leader in that. And also, carbon emissions from buildings and homes are now the single largest source of emissions statewide. We have the technology. We're seeing it here. We're seeing it in other buildings. I want to the net zero or the zero building just the other week, and also Bread Alone. We have leaders here. We need to do it, and so I thank everyone for their thoughtfulness, for taking the actions, for pushing through the false narratives to show that this is possible, because it's your work here on the ground and at the local level which will help us convince everyone we need to at the state so that everyone can follow your lead, and I'm committed to working on that with you. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Senator Hinchey. And now I'd like to introduce another incredible champion on climate, County Executive Pat Ryan, who launched Ulster County's Green New Deal. Pat has committed the county government to sourcing 100% of its power from local renewable sources by 2030, which is 10 years ahead of what we're looking to do in the state law. He's also launched programs like the Green Business Champions Program and the Green Jobs Program to position the county to take advantage of the enormous economic opportunity of shifting to a clean energy economy. So I'd like to welcome now our County Executive, Pat Ryan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. Here we go. Good morning, everybody. It's awesome to be here. I especially want to recognize Mayor Rogers and the village, as well as Rick Alfondre and the team. I mean, it's easy to talk about the big ideas that we've been talking about, but what convinces people when they're skeptical or uncertain is when you can actually see something tangible. And so to stand in front of a building like this that really sets a very high bar for how we're going to reduce building emissions, to do that in parallel with what we're doing, as Jen referred to, in transportation, which is our other biggest greenhouse gas emitting sector. Ulster County now has 3 electric buses on the road. Just as a point of comparison, New York City has 15 in the entire city. We have 3 in our small but mighty county here. So across a bunch of dimensions, as everyone has said, really proud of our climate leadership and climate action that we're taking from the ground level up. I just want to make one other point to build on what Senator Hinchey said and Jen said. We've talked about the moral imperative, the imperative for my kids and future generations. We've talked about the economic imperative and job creation, which we're already starting to see here in Ulster County. I also want to talk about the national security imperative at the moment that we're at right now. we have become increasingly beholden to people like Vladimir Putin and Europe, even more so than us, because we have not made the investment and the commitment to move away from fossil fuels. So if you need yet another reason to aggressively move in the direction that New York State is moving, that our county is moving, that is another important one that I think we have to remind people of. So I just want to thank Jen for bringing this group together and your leadership, all of my colleagues here, and I hope everybody enjoys this beautiful day.
Thank you. And my partner, Bill Wheeler-Murray, who is like critical in helping organize this whole event. Thank you, Bill, wherever you went. In the back. And a volunteer in this department. Thank you, Pat. Now I'd like to bring up Eve Walter, Vice Chair of the Ulster County Legislature and representative for the town and village of New Paltz. Her efforts to promote sustainability in the built environment actually go back to her earlier position on the New Paltz as New Paltz Planning Board Chair. And she also happens to live in a net zero emissions house and drives an EV, so she really walks the walk, Legislator Walter.
Thank you. So it's true. I have privilege. And so what does my privilege give me? It gives me the opportunity to be able to afford a net zero house. That's net zero. So geothermal and solar. So the only thing I pay to Central Hudson is $20 a month for administrative fees. I have 2 electronic cars, one for myself and one for my husband, which means I don't have to pay anything for fuel. But all of that costs a lot of money. I was able to have access to that because I have privilege. My parents live in Zero Place, so they're 2 blocks away in a net zero building where they have no utility costs at all. I get to live in New Paltz, where maybe my taxes are higher, but my community center has an electric charging station, and we have a giant community garden, and my mayor drives the same car as I do. But that comes with privilege right now, but it shouldn't be that way. And so the important part of this initiative is how do we make all of these opportunities accessible to absolutely everyone? So thank you. So for New York State to move forward with this means that we'll have more industries clamoring to build the kinds of zero emission types of products that we all need. That creates more competition, that lowers prices. It also creates jobs so that more and more people can be employed who can afford these things. And so we need to get to a place in New York State where you don't just get to save the environment because you have enough money to, but you get to save the environment because it's the right thing to do. Yeah. I'll also say I am a county legislator and I'm the chair of Health, Human Services, and Housing. All 3 of those things are completely tied in to environment. And so it becomes important to me, even in my role as the legislature, to support the work in the executive's office to make sure that here in Ulster County, we rise above and really show an example of what we can do. So for every new building, we have an environmental checklist that we use to review to make sure that there not only are environmental add-ons being considered, but other ways to offset, including deforestation. We are very active in supporting the executive's office in conversion of vehicles into green vehicles. So let's set an example in New Paltz for the county, let's set an example in the county for the state, and let's set an example in the state for the rest of the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Eve. I'd next like to welcome Town Supervisor Neil Patez, who's been a hugely important partner in this project. And also, I just want to mention they passed a resolution, was it last week, to support the goals of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act and the scoping plan.
All right, so buildings like this are possible. They're not probable. It's very unlikely that they're going to happen. And so a little background on this. This project has been decades in the making. We've needed a new fire station for a long time. We got some money from the state after Irene and Lee, and because the town and village decided to work together, we're getting this building. That alone is very complicated, and then finding the money for the rest of the building. And so we did all of that, and then we got the final plans back, and I'm not sure if the mayor's going to talk about it, but it had fiberglass insulation and big gas heaters. And we're lucky that we have a visionary mayor, and we have Zero Place in town, and we have Rick Alfondre's firm, who are also leaders in this field. And the mayor was like, this is crazy. And, we pushed back a little bit, and they said, well, it meets all the codes, it's fine. But because I think we wanted a higher standard, we reached out to Rick, and Tim, the mayor, pushed it, and we have this. And I think we're lucky to have it, but what it shows is that the bar needs to be set higher, the standards need to change. We cannot just do the bare minimum, which is what's allowed. So that's why we support making these changes universal.
Thank you, Neil, and that's a good intro to our mayor, Tim Rogers, who I think it's worth explaining that I think the village owns the building, am I correct? And the town owns the land underneath it? Okay, well, you'll explain it, but come on up, Tim, hold on.
I don't want to explain those legal differences. We actually spent months and months and an incredible amount of time negotiating this arrangement because this money was sourced from, as Neil pointed out, originally from the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery. And I also want to start by just thanking our volunteer fire department. I think one of the most important things that we do as elected officials in New Paltz is support the culture of our volunteer fire department. These individuals, both men and women, respond to, on average, more than 2 calls per day. You wake me up in the middle of the night, I'm useless the next day. This is what these guys do regularly, men and women. It's truly an amazing group. And when we wanted to actually fulfill this dream of constructing a new fire department that we so desperately needed, as Supervisor Patez pointed out, it's been a plan that has been kicked around for years. And starting nearly 8 years ago, we started looking very seriously at it. Our volunteer fire department members were all in trying to figure out how we could build something that was both cost-effective and prudent and responsible for taxpayers, but also as energy efficient as possible. And from the beginning, we pushed the state-assigned engineers and architects to try to construct something that was green and energy efficient. And I have the emails. We were regularly told that what we were asking for would cost millions and millions of dollars more. And to Neil's point, we actually submitted or we made bid documents available, and we got back really uninspiring proposals, and we did not know what to do, and we made a very hard decision to nearly start over. I mean, to use the design, but to try to find an architect, and we leaned on our friend Rick Alfondre, and our question was, Rick, are we completely mad? Is this a possibility? And he was like, it absolutely is. And in addition to trying to make this as energy efficient building as possible, he also helped us make it a more cost-effective building, just in terms of some of its basic design. And that was some of the important changes that allowed us to make it more energy efficient. So thanks, Rick. I hope I didn't steal too much of your thunder, but public shout out is well deserved. But this was a state project that did not require it to be a green or super energy efficient building, and we are the project managers who actually get complicated projects done, and it takes a long time, and it takes an enormous amount of resilience and patience, but that's local government. I'm so pleased that that Michelle and Pat are here. So when you guys are looking at stuff at the county level or state level or potentially the federal level, lean on us, give us a call. Like, how can you create policy or write grant programs that will actually move the needle? Because we have real on the ground experience how to do these things, and we'd love to, you know, not be in a situation again where the state's like, here's some money, go build a status quo, energy inefficient building. You know, we took a lot of shrapnel, and you know, a lot of folks told us we were nuts to try to do this differently. And we're excited to try to do it again on our next big capital project, whatever that might be. But thanks everyone for coming, and thank you again, volunteer firefighters. We would absolutely be in an enormous amount of trouble without you, so it's so important that you have this amazing, impressive building, and you know, let's do as much as we can to support that culture of volunteerism and volunteer fire departments. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. And you know, you brought up two really important points, and one is local governments are hugely important partners in meeting our climate goals at the state level, and have to be really taken seriously as partners at the state level. The other, I think it's a really interesting story, you know, you told about contractors initially saying it would cost too much, and it raises the point that, you know, this is a change for many professions, and they need the training and education, because we are building buildings differently and have to build buildings differently now. So there's a lot of workforce development and training that has to be done. I'm very excited to bring up our next guest, our Fire Department Chief, Corey Worthman, and I also want to mention that he's also the village building inspector. So he is fighting for public health and safety in many different ways every day. So come on up.
All right. I can tell you there's nobody here more happy than me and the people that I represent right now. So again, my name is Corey Worthman. I'm the Chief of Department for the New Paltz Fire Department. I represent a really awesome, great group of firefighters here in New Paltz who are extremely committed to their community. What better way than to further our commitment and help meet some goals with energy efficiency and build a building that will be, we hope, an example for all fire departments, all fire companies. I do want to say a huge thank you to everybody involved, from the design to funding. Firemen are not really the type of people that ask for help. We're usually the ones giving it. So I'll tell you, it's really hard for us as a culture asking for help, but the amount that we received from everybody in this project is what made it happen. And I'm going to tell you, we're all talking about making things happen. That's how we do it. We need to help each other. We need to recognize where help needs to be given. We're so happy to be recipients of it. I really look forward to see where this goes in the state. I can tell you, I've had fire departments from other states reach out asking about our architect. I haven't told them that yet, but you got a thumbs up. Asking about our building, so it's being noticed, and we're really happy to be that example and continue in any way that we can possibly continue that commitment for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And last but certainly not least, we want to welcome the architect of this building, Rick Alfandre of Alfandre Architecture, who I've known for a very long time and has been like an incredible leader in the green building space in his profession, and is responsible for many incredible buildings in our area. So, Rick, thank you.
Thank you. I put down some key words so I remember everyone. I wanted to thank the mayor a few years ago. As Tim said, he called me up and said, why are we having to use fossil fuels in this building, and can we try for net zero? And I said, well, we definitely can get rid of fossil fuels, and we can make the building ultra energy efficient. It doesn't mean there won't be energy bills. There will be, and they'll be significant probably. But this building will be probably use a third of the comparable code minimum building, maybe less, in terms of the amount of energy it uses. And it's all electric except for the generator, which is fossil fuel still. I wanted to thank the community and the fire department, and I also want to mention and thank Neil, because the next building over, the police and court building, is a renovation, and it is also all electric. Police chief is here, and it's important to know that it's not just ground up. There's things that we can do for existing buildings, a lot of different things that we can do. I want to acknowledge Sam Dillahay. Sam is the project architect, and really Sam and Sean in my office and all of the engineers at GPI did the heavy lifting and made this project happen from the time we were hired until whenever we close it out, and that could be a little while. I also want to acknowledge Palumbo Construction Services, the CM. Will from Palumbo is here. They've coordinated the 5 prime trades. Because this is a public works, Wick's Law project, it means that there are actually 5 prime contractors that had to work together nicely in the sandbox, and that's not so easy in public works. It's actually a pretty heavy lift, and Palumbo's been really, really good, and I really appreciate it. So one of the words that keeps coming up is the word resilience, and we need to think about it in different levels. A fire department, emergency services buildings have to be resilient under many conditions. And the way this building is built, besides the fact that it accommodates all the needs that the fire department should require for generations to come, it's built with insulated concrete form walls from footing to roof. So what that means is that it's a reinforced concrete building. It has insulation outside and in, so there's almost no thermal bridging or conductivity of energy through the walls. And then the roof systems, you can see here, this is a steel frame, and the office wing is wood frame. They're super insulated. Then what we're doing is heating and cooling the building with high efficiency air source heat pumps. They're not the typical things you see on the wall, but out back you'll see there are 3 large pieces of equipment, and they run refrigerant into the building through various air handlers or blowers, or they're converted to hot water to heat this slab, radiant heat. So we're putting the heat where it's needed for the fire trucks and not heating the entire space. The point here is that radiant heat can be done with heat pumps, and it's not geothermal ground source, which we would have preferred to do, but with an analysis from NYSERDA, it wasn't cost effective, so to speak. We couldn't justify the cost of the additional well fields and geo equipment. So, but again, it's air source, and it works, and it will work. And actually, if you touch the red tubing over there, you'll see that it's warm, because we're trying to dry out the slab so the final floor finish can go down in this room. There's also energy recovery systems. What those do is bring in fresh air and exhaust stale air and keep a healthy indoor air quality. On the top of the office wing, there's 2 cupolas. Those are there because one is bringing in fresh air and one is exhausting stale air from that major part of the building. What we also did is we changed the form of the building. As you can see, this is a big shed roof facing south, and we took some dormers off of the south facing roof of the office wing so that we could create a future-proofed large aperture or apertures for future solar PV, which Ted and his company are working on and hopefully can actually be installed here. But the reality is that we don't need to have the on-site solar because of the climate action plan in New York State. By 2040, all of the electricity on the grid most likely will be renewable energy. So that means that because we have an all-electric building, not only are we not emitting here, but we're not emitting at the source of the electricity that's being generated. And that's really the circular thinking that has to be made. So first, we make the building very energy efficient as best we can with the dollars that we have. Second, we bring in fresh air, exhaust stale air, and then we condition the space with energy efficient heat pump equipment, be it air source or ground source. And then we offset all of that, the remaining energy use, with renewable energy, be it on-site or on-grid. And that's really where New York State is a leader, that the grid will become green in the next less than 20 years, totally green, and that's really, really, really good. So I'm mentioning that because there is, what is the public hearing? Is it the legislature?
There's two public hearings.
Two public.
The public hearing on the climate plan is at 4 p.m.
But is it the legislature?
The legislature is having, the assembly is having a hearing on the All-Electric Buildings Act right now.
And then what's in Peekskill?
The hearing on the draft scoping plan to meet the climate goals.
And but who's holding the hearing? PSC, the Climate Action Council, and then they're going to inform the legislature as to what people say. Okay, so hopefully that explains in general the building and the mission, and I really appreciate the opportunity to give you this information and to help with this great project. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, so just so everyone understands the context for this event. So at 4 p.m., we fought really hard to get a public hearing in the Hudson Valley on the state's climate action plan to meet the emissions reduction goals. So it's in Peekskill, downstate, from 4 to 7. But also, there just happens to be, on this very day, a hearing in the State Assembly happening right now on the All-Electric Buildings Act that Senator Hinchey is co-sponsoring, and it's actually a recommendation of the scoping plan to pass this legislation this year. So that's how it all loops together, and I really appreciate the kind of the explanation from Rick about, you know, what went into this building. And I just want to note that, you know, the points he made, it's like it improves the public, like the quality of the air in the building for our first responders. Like, it's a healthier environment for them to be in. They're getting fresh air. They're not breathing in fossil fuels. They have an induction stove in the kitchen. And also, it is soundproof. You cannot hear this throughway when you're in the building. It's like incredible. But anyway, I want to just congratulate the New Paltz Fire Department and everyone that was part of this project, and thank all of our elected officials for being here today, and thank you all for being here today.